I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to Bowling Green and the people on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
And together, Rebecca and I are going to bring you a wonderful hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and family, co-workers, and the animals around you, and the people and the plants. And we are here, up here in Northwest Ohio, and we're having a little bit of a cold snap right at the moment. In fact, my phone says that today's temperatures are 2 degrees below average, so whopping 2 degrees. So basically, this is average. Essentially, this is average temperatures for mid-February.
This is February weather we just forgot, that's all.
Yeah.
We forgot what it's like.
Exactly. And in fact, later in the week, we're going to be 20 to 30 degrees above average. So, so this is essentially what's happening is we're kind of being pasteurized, you know. This is how pasteurization works. Is you go, high and low and high and low. And it really does affect the wildlife, because the critters, the birds and the deer actually had already assumed it was spring. I mean, I saw a whole bunch of deer out there in the park where I like to walk on the Slippery Elm Trail in Bowling Green. They were out in the fields grazing on the fresh green shoots, because all the grass thought that the rain, or that the spring had come, and they sent up their nice nutritious shoots. And in fact, I actually saw a flock of sandhill cranes heading north, going right over Bowling Green, which was really cool. But, they're getting fooled, because I mean they've decided, it's been so warm for so long. The plants and animals are like, okay, I guess this is spring now, and they started making, doing their migrations and starting to send up shoots. And now we got a cold snap, and so that can damage them. And if you keep this whipsawing back and forth, cold to hot to cold to hot, some animals and some plants aren't going to survive. And so this is this is not good. All right. So, but it is kind of nice to be back to almost normal here for temperatures in February. But 50s and 60s are coming very soon, like in the next week. Something else that has become normal for Ohio is corruption.
Yeah.
In state government. And we're going to have this, I'm doing an HB 6 update. I can't believe it. Let me actually back up a little bit. This is a show where we're going to be we've got a great show lined up for you today. We've got an interview with Zhiwen Ma from the National Renewable Energy Laboratories. He's going to be talking about something called particulate heat storage, which is kind of cool.
Sounds ominous.
Even though it's hot.
Yeah.
And actually, we're going to have a special presentation from Congressional Representative Marcy Kaptur this morning before we get into that. She made this very stirring speech on the floor of the Congress that we're going to listen to in just a minute. So then after we hear from Marcy and Zhiwen, then we hear from our advertisers and patrons, and then we'll hear from Rebecca. And Rebecca, what do you have to say?
I'm going to talk about the Harriet Tubman National Historical Park.
Okay. So that's kind of having to do with Black History Month, I'm guessing.
Yes,
Okay.
and they have nature around there too.
All right. And so then it's Ecological News, and that'll be our show. And hopefully, at some point, we're going to hear from you. If you could call in at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. We'd really appreciate it. We'd love to hear from you. And next week's show is going to be pre-recorded, so this will be this is your last chance for 2 weeks to call in. So if you've been thinking about some sort of ecological thing that's coming up, now today's the day to call in about it. And of course, you can always send a text or call at any time to 419-973-5841. That's 419-973-5841. So anyway, back to corruption. And I was talking about, with Rebecca on the way in, we were talking about how this HB6 scandal, the nuclear power scandal where they First Energy bribed a bunch of people to get $1 billion of bailouts for their nuclear plants. This has been with us since literally the very first show. I mean, we've been talking about HB6 since we started 5 years ago. And there was just a big dramatic development this past week. 3 more people got indicted, arrested. Chuck Jones, the former CEO of First Energy, there's a big fish for you.
Boy, oh boy.
Mike Dowling, who was First Energy's chief lobbyist during the whole scandal corruption part, and Sam Randazzo, the former head of the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio.
I remember you talking. I remember that name, Sam Randazzo. I remember you talking about him.
Randazzo, right? Yeah. And yeah, even before he was arrested back in 2020, he was. We talked about him a lot because he was doing things like companies that wanted to put up like solar fields or wind farms. When he was head of PUCO, what he did was he had them go all the way through the process. So he would let them spend the tens of millions of dollars to do all the studies and get all the permissions and get cool with all the local people and stuff, and go all the way up to the final PUCO hearing, and then he would just say, no.
Great.
Yeah, no, forget it. Yeah, I know you did all the studies and stuff because he was protecting the assets of First Energy, the stranded assets, the nuclear power plants that can't take any competition from wind or solar, because wind or solar are so much cheaper and so much cleaner and so much better in every way. So he was doing a little bit of corrupt stuff there even before he got arrested for the whole HB6 scandal. So they were arrested and they were arraigned in the Summit County Court of Common Pleas, which is an interesting kind of come down. Usually you'd think white collar criminals would go to a slightly classier court, but nope, they're in the Court of Common Pleas. And the scandal is actually finally touching DeWine.
Did you realize that? That means they don't do felony, or everything starts in Court of Common Pleas. It starts out being first you got to get indicted as a what do you call it, misdemeanor. Then you get bumped up to felony court if it's serious.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, I worked for the Lucas County prosecutor for a little bit.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so DeWine has finally admitted he made a mistake in hiring Randazzo and appointing Randazzo as head of the PUCO, even though at the time a whole bunch of different environmental organizations pointed out to him, sent him letters. There was a sign-on with a whole bunch of organizations that sent him a letter saying, look, this is a clear conflict of interest. Sam Randazzo works for First Energy. You can't put him as head of the PUCO where he's supposed to be regulating First Energy. And he ignored them, and he also ignored a report from one of his right-hand people who said essentially the same thing. But now he's saying, oh, I made a mistake. And had I known somehow, had I gotten this information, I would have never appointed him. But the problem is he did appoint him, even though lots of groups pointed this out. I think maybe the problem is that a lot of those groups are citizens groups, and state government officials in Ohio are just used to just ignoring citizen groups. It's like,
basically,
you said something, it's like, oh. Yeah, they practice.
now we have the citizen group, which will come up and make some noise, meaningless noise that will just pretend it's birdsong.
Right, they will go. So, but this scandal has reached the point where even Marcy Kaptur has talked about it on the floor of the Congress, and this is a little speech she made, and I wanted to just play the whole thing in its entirely. So let's go ahead and let's hear what Marcy has to say.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to highlight significant developments in the ongoing commercial nuclear energy scandal in Ohio, the worst in U.S. history. It involves First Energy Corporation's conspiracy, wire fraud, and bribery of highest-level Ohio public officials in return for a legislative bailout of its flagging nuclear plants. Bribed public officials made sure that the company's debts were dumped on the public as they violated public safety time and again. This past Friday, a Summit County, Ohio grand jury returned the indictments against the former CEO of First Energy, the former First Energy Senior Vice President of External Affairs, the former chair of the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, each for multiple felonies related to their alleged roles in the largest public corruption scandal in Ohio's history. The indictments by the Summit County prosecutor and Ohio's Attorney General aim to bring these corrupt, unethical, and dangerous, yes, dangerous individuals to justice. Driven by greed and self-interest, First Energy not only compromised Ohio's state legislature and its top leaders and other critical public institutions, they were responsible for severely mismanaging time and again the operations of inherently dangerous nuclear assets. I wish to place in the record an article by the Toledo Blade columnist Tom Henry dating back to 2003 following another dangerous incident at that plant, quoting Nuclear Navy retired Admiral Joe Williams. Admiral Williams strongly condemned the malfeasance and nuclear endangerment attendant to the top managers and corporate chieftains, and that kept on year after year after year. As I have cautioned before, corporate nuclear culture influences safety culture. We need only look at the troubled history of multiple major nuclear safety violations and criminal conduct at First Energy's Davis-Besse nuclear plant in our district for evidence of this relationship. It's a sad story for America. One must ask whether and how the fines and penalties that First Energy and its subsidiary, Energy Harbor, have had to pay to avoid criminal and civil trials. How will America deter future misconduct by the commercial nuclear power energy companies? Federal regulators didn't do their job. What is clear is that more justice must be achieved to make Ohio ratepayers and our communities safe and whole again. A class action suit settled by First Energy in August of last year netted payments to individual ratepayers, get ready, a mere $10 to $20. Moreover, Ohio consumers continue to subsidize First Energy's antiquated coal-fired power plants even outside Ohio under the portion of H.R. 6 that passed the state legislature that is yet to be repealed. Another casualty is the local school district, No Harbor, Ohio, where the Davis-Besse plant is located. It continues to suffer millions and millions of huge dollars of tax losses due to the incremental devaluation of the plant's public utility property values over the years. I continue to urge the state legislature, state and federal prosecutors, and state and federal regulators to take bold action. Let's right these wrongs, and let's assure federal authorities achieve safe, clean, modern, and responsible nuclear energy production in Ohio and in this country. This slipshod, corrupt nuclear energy must never, ever, ever happen in America again. Thank you, and I yield back and ask that extraneous materials be added to the record as well.
All right.
And I yield back.
So, pretty good words there from Representative Kaptur, who reminds us, we joke about the corruption, but in the end, what that kind of culture leads to is cutting corners, cutting back on safety, and as she pointed out, the possibility that it could really wipe out this region, because that kind of culture led to the hole in the head accident, and that hole in the head accident almost turned Northwest Ohio into a wasteland a la Fukushima and Chernobyl. But of course, she blew it all in the very last sentence when she said, future nuclear power must be developed safely and cleanly. It's kind of like saying, that we need to have casinos where people don't lose any money.
Yeah.
It's just inherent in all nuclear culture, past, present, and future, because it really depends on that kind of corruption to exist, because economically the market has spoken, and the market says no nukes. And so without this kind of government influence, you would not have nuclear power at all. And of course, we have to definitely, for legal reasons, point out that Chuck Jones, Mike Dowling, and Sam Radazzo, all three have pled not guilty to all charges, and so they maintain their innocence. And they are innocent until proven guilty, but it does not look good for them, because a lot of their alleged co-conspirators are already in prison. Okay, so now you might say, a lot of people are saying, so what's the alternative to all this corrupt nuclear stuff? The answer is wind and solar. And then what the pro-nukers say to that is, but wind and solar is so intermittent, it varies so much from minute to minute and day to day. It's not just practical like our nukes that just keep running full blast all the time. Well,
except when there's a problem, and there's a problem every 5 minutes.
Yeah. At least once a week, a nuke plant crashes, goes from a gigawatt to zero in a minute, which destabilizes the whole grid. So A, what they say about their nukes is wrong, but B, the way we smooth out all this intermittency is with energy storage. And I was privileged to interview a fella named Zhiwen Ma with the National Renewable Energy Laboratories, and he has come up with a very simple, extremely cost-effective, long-term energy storage technology that literally anybody could do for a fraction of the cost of a battery system, and that can store energy for months and months at a time. It's a great technology, and so let's hear about that now. Go on to that interview. Hello and welcome to For a Green Future. Could you please share with us your name and your title?
Yeah, I'm Zhiwen Ma. I'm an engineer at National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, to develop renewable energy technologies, including solar energy, energy storage, hydrogen production, and storage.
So before we talk about the energy storage system you folks have developed, please give us a little background on NREL.
What do you folks do? What is your mission?
Yeah, NREL is one of 17 national labs under DOE. We support Department of Energy's energy security, energy resilience, and lower energy cost mission to serve the national economics. We also, here at NREL, we are focusing on renewable energy that reduce carbon emissions and also provide reliable and economic energy supply for the nation.
So, what exactly is particulate energy storage, and why would we need this type of storage?
Excellent question. So basically, this coming into more and more renewable come onto the grid, and there is a need of the energy storage with longer and longer storage durations. Currently, the energy storage is mainly focused on battery technologies. And for future, we foresee that more and more renewable energy need longer duration storage capacity so that electricity supply can bridge days that without sun and wind that cannot generate electricity from solar and wind power. This technology is aiming at several days of storage that need more than 10 hours that currently battery is in a few hours in a cheap and economic way so that we can continuously supplying power to the grid, to the end users and every homes. So that's what we developed the technology that not using expensive material. We just use sand that can be mined in Midwest, and it's very lower in cost, come from ground, and it's contained in a insulated silos. We have collaborators in Northeast Ohio that support equipment, materials that enable this technology. So because it's using sand at very lower cost and also the concrete, the refractory material, so the cost is much lower than battery and also can generate larger capacity to drive a conventional thermal power generation. So therefore, it provides flexibility for the grid and reliability for power supply.
What is the potential of this kind of storage? How much power can you store in the form of heated sand?
Yeah, as DOE's goal is somewhere between 10 hours to 100 hours. That represent about 4 or 5 days in a week that you can bridge through the busiest time in a week. And the amount of energy can be generated like a thermal power plant in a few tens megawatt up to a few hundred megawatts. And also the duration at 100 hours is equivalent to Niagara Falls waterfall through one day. That total amount of energy is called about, in our case, for 400 megawatt power generation, it's around 76 gigawatt hour. So equivalent to Niagara Falls water for whole day, that amount of energy.
So you did a prototype plant and that worked well. What's the next step?
Yeah, great question. In 2021, we were supported by Department of Energy Advanced Energy Program called APRE. And at that time, we're in the low TRL laboratory testing of the prototypes and developed the whole system. So we gained the confidence from our laboratory test and also did all the preliminary design and the cost analysis and seized the potential for meeting the goal as stated above. And right now we got further support from DOE into a pilot stage that developed a demonstration technology that look into commercial relevant product scale that can be demonstrated in our scaling up work in the next few years.
Where is the technology now? How close is it to deployment?
Excellent question. So we were constantly inquired by interesting end users in both in the US and overseas. So they all look into currently 4-6 hours by battery, and they foresee that end of this decade will move into longer duration, tens of hours, and where battery is not so competitive economically. And so they are looking for long term that uh, around later decades, they will looking to implement this technology. Some of the early adoptions, maybe in the current thermal power plant, when they retire, they have the existing assets infrastructure that could be integrate with this energy storage technology to convert those thermal power plant into some kind of thermal storage power plant that continue to generate revenue.
Coal to clean thermal storage, that's great. A lot of the technology is the same, isn't it? Except instead of burning coal, you're just putting heat into and taking it out of sand.
Exactly. And more than that is they might have usable steam power generation generator substation. Those assets also can be reused and extend the thermal power plant life and revenue.
Have you heard about the Polar Night energy system in Finland? It's 8 megawatt hours and it's billed as the first commercial particulate storage project.
Absolutely. Actually, in their news release, they also refer to our project to substantiate their development because we have a longer development history. Our ideas start from Department of Energy's Sunshot program in early 2010s. And we first developed particle-based storage for concentrating solar power in DOE's Solar Energy Technology program. And in 2017, when we moved to long-duration storage, use electricity directly heating sand that's coming into this stage that's supported by APRI when Finland is taking a different route in terms of their local cool climate need heat and power supply. So they basically more of supporting the community energy demand. And in our case, we're looking for utility, although our technology also applicable to community heating, cooling, and also applicable industry process heat.
Sounds like once you've got the heat stored, you can use it either to generate electricity or just use the heat directly.
Exactly. Yeah, that's multi-purpose. Yeah.
So how does heated particulate storage fit in with battery storage? Could this technology replace lithium batteries?
Yeah, this technology is more complementary to lithium-ion battery in the power generation side because lithium-ion battery has advantage in the short-term quick response ramping up that can complement all grid electricity demand. And this is complement in the hours more than 10 hours up to several days. So in that case, have another cheap alternative that complement to lithium-ion battery. And besides that is because sand stores heat can be used for replacing natural gas when reduce the footprint by using replacing fossil fuel. So that gives another use of the heated sand in the industry process to supply heat in the manufacturing, and also provide heat for building and other heat demand place that more than electricity.
How could people follow what the National Renewable Energy Lab does?
Yeah, I got it. So certainly our website is very versatile, contains all the development, technology development at NREL. And We also have various type of news release, technical report that to the public people can access. And Win, any other ideas to this question?
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think we are in the stage of energy transition. Certainly, many technologies are evolving, and we don't know the winner yet. So that's what we also develop technologies that can complementary to other type of technology. But the trend is forward is more on the low carbon, so that we can reverse the climate change because many people feels it's more and more real and affecting their daily life. So we want to make that happen so that we can have a carbon-free future that preserve our living environment.
Okay. And that was our interview. I hope you enjoyed it. And, it kind of reinforces a point that we try to make here on For a Green Future quite a bit. And that is that we have all the technology we need to turn carbon off tomorrow. And a lot of that technology is like really simple and straightforward. I mean, heating up sand is, like really easy to do. And then just pulling the heat out of that heated up sand and using it to generate electricity or to directly heat buildings and things. Again, very simple, very inexpensive. And as we say over and over again, the green future is actually a better future. Your electricity bills will be lower and the pollution will be gone, or the pollution will be pretty much gone with this kind of energy storage. And mining sand is much simpler than mining lithium. So a little bit of optimism there. Okay, and so now something else that we are kind of optimistic about are our advertisers and patrons. So let's go ahead and hear from them.
For a Green Future is also brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They also restore wildlife habitats and lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. There are several ways to get a hold of them and find out what's happening. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. Another is to visit their website, www.wcparks.org. The website again is www.wcparks.org. They are also available on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and many others. Just search for WC Parks. That's the Wood County Park District, and we're very grateful for their support.
And we are also grateful for the support of our patrons. And these are wonderful, amazing people who've gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page. And every month, these heroes, a little bit comes out of their account, comes over to us, and this is how we can afford to keep the show on the air. So please consider going to patreon.com and sign up to become one of our wonderful patrons, and you will be thanked profusely on the air when you do that. Both Rebecca and I will thank you. Okay, and speaking of Rebecca, it's time for your portion of the show, and what will we be talking about this week?
All right, well, in honor of Black History Month, we are talking about the Harriet Tubman National Historical Park, which is located in Auburn, New York. And unfortunately, right now, most of the buildings are closed for renovation, as I understand it, or at least some of them. But normally, it would feature the Tubman family farm, the church that was used by the freed slaves, including presumably the Tubman family, and also the Fort Hill Cemetery, where I believe Harriet Tubman is buried. So apparently the reason Auburn, New York, why? Because Tubman moved her family there after she'd rescued many of them from slavery, and she moved them down from Ontario. One reason, it was pretty close to Canada, so if they needed to leave in a hurry, they could, in an emergency if the political climate changed. Also, there were a large number of progressive white allies there, and also a large free black population, which allowed for camouflage because, nobody can tell if you used to be a slave while you're running around there. You just look like everybody else. So, in terms of nature, it's near something called Lake Owasco, which would be the 6th largest and 3rd easternmost of the Finger Lakes, which is a series of 11 really long, skinny, but very, very deep lakes in New York State. Lake Owasco, anyway, is a ground moraine type of lake, which a ground moraine is made of sediment that builds up under glaciers. Kind of like little streams are going on under there, and it forms kind of a rolling, hillocky landscape, usually with lakes or swamps in low-lying areas, which these are some seriously low-lying areas here. The inflow is creatively named the Owasco Inlet, and the outflow is named the Owasco Outlet. So not a lot of imagination went into that, if one were to be critical. And it has 2 islands. The name may be Iroquois for bridge on the water, which I found, when I was looking it up, I found a couple of Lake Owasos. Seems like that may be one of the, a lot of lakes are named Manuman because they had wild rice in them, so, or some variation on that. And the Finger Lakes generally have some ecological issues, according to pbslearningmedia.org in 2023. Mostly, their problem seems to be cyanobacteria blooms, just like Lake Erie, which is a threat to the drinking water and also the tourism industry in all 11 lakes. This has been exacerbated by flooding from climate change-induced storms, which increases the influx of nutrients, and it's not good. Onondaga Lake, in fact, has been called the most polluted lake in the United States. So that's a different lake from the one we're talking about, but it's around there, and it's not good. Also, if you're planning to visit to this area and you really want to have the full experience, in addition to sitting there, you can, while you're reading your little Harriet Tubman biography and psyching yourself up for this, you can also play the works of classical composer Arthur Farwell, who composed a pair of piano pieces about Lake Owasco in 1899.
Aha.
So, you can sort of look at the little picture of the lake and, listen to that and read the Tubman biography to get yourself ready.
Oh, that sounds like a good thing to do.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I actually used to hang out in the Finger Lakes, and they're called the Finger Lakes because they kind of look like somebody took their fingers and dragged them north and south up, along the state there.
Giant claw marks.
It's kind of like giant claw marks,
Yeah.
yeah. But I used to hang out on camps at Lake Seneca because it was a Boy Scout camp out there, and one thing that you didn't quite mention is that the Finger Lakes are incredibly beautiful. I mean, they've got these hills around them, and they're very deep. And when they're not filled with cyanobacteria, they're just gorgeous lakes. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I did not know the Harriet Tubman Finger Lakes connection before.
Yeah,
So
it's right in there.
cool. All right, on to ecological news. And the first bit of news was kind of surprising to me. I turned on my public TV station, and lo and behold, there on the Ohio channel was a hearing on something called HB 197, which is a proposed state law, first proposed back in June of 2023, and the title is Establishing Community Solar Pilot Program and Solar Development Program. And I was just shocked. I'm like, this is Ohio.
Yeah.
What there, chairing the hearing was Dick Stein, the fellow who famously chaired all the HB 6 hearings. And as we have described before, when AEP testified at those hearings and said the famous phrase, we don't like the bill the way it currently is, but we look forward to working with you to improve it. And that's what Dick Stein leaned forward and started drooling. It's like, oh yes, we look forward to working with you too. And 2 weeks later, the coal subsidies for AEP's coal plants were added into HB6.
Yep.
Anyway, so I was like, what's Dick Stein doing, talking like he's actually supporting solar energy? And so what this does is it creates an opening for community solar, 1.7 gigawatts over 4 years. And this was also supported by the IBEW, who generally opposes these kind of projects because it threatens their base there at the nuclear power plants. And again, I was like, what's going on? And what I realized is that what this does is it caps the amount of solar. So it allows you to have some solar, but it prevents you from getting too much.
And we don't want people seeing that it in fact works.
Right, but you do want a few, projects you can point to and show off, kind of like Bowling Green with its 3% solar field, which is a 20 megawatt field, and that BG's 20 megawatt field supplies 3% of the demand for 30,000 people, a city of 30,000. And this project, the community solar program, is projected to provide 2% of Ohio's electricity demand. So, a little bit, not too much. The projects, each individual project for regular areas is capped at 10 megawatts, which is only half BG's size. So BG could not do their project again under this program. And brownfields are capped at 20 megawatts, which is the same size. So you can put a BG-sized solar system on a brownfield. But, it basically, it's too little, and that's why I think that it's being supported by people who normally oppose solar outright. They are hearing the cries of Ohioans who are, both conservative and liberal and independents. Everybody wants us to have more solar, so here's your 2%. Now, contrast that with a story, go on to our next story, also based in Ohio. This is in PV Magazine, and on January 10th, Ohio's largest solar complex is just started, and that is a 200 megawatts of the 750 megawatt solar field has begun generating electricity. So there's 200 megawatts. So that one field, done commercially by EDF Renewables in the U.S., already maxed out what this community solar project or program would be able to do in a year. So this is it's called the Fox Squirrel Solar Complex. It's in Madison County in Ohio, and it's 1.4 million solar panels. And so this is going to generate hundreds of millions of revenue for the local school districts and the local governments. And it's a great deal for everybody involved. It's going to supply inexpensive electricity. And you have to contrast this with 10 counties in Ohio that are controlled by Republicans that have banned solar. So they won't be getting any of this economic benefits that they will be getting in Madison County. But this development, the Fox Squirrel Solar Complex, is more along the scale of what we actually need in Ohio. It's nice, HB 197, they finally admitted, okay, we can let some solar in, but at the same time, they're capping the amount they allow. So it's really one step forward, 2 steps back with it. But, at least we do get our 1 step forward, I guess. Okay, contrast that off to our next story. We're going to South Africa. And there is a story on February 12th in Bloomberg. And essentially what the South African government is doing in Cape Town, because Cape Town's electricity is notoriously unreliable right now. They literally have blackouts every day when the demand gets too high. And so what the city of Cape Town has decided to do is it's going to do two things. One, it's going to allow people to put rooftop solar on, and they've guaranteed they will buy all the electricity that people with solar rooftops can produce. So that's a great thing. And then interestingly, they're going to allow businesses to sell solar to each other. So if a business has a big flat roof and puts a ton of solar on there, they can sell their electricity they generate directly to another business nearby. And so what experience tells us in the rest of the world, especially in Australia, for example, is that this will stabilize the grid. Now, there are rumors, there's discussions, there's possible plans of South Africa going nuclear in the future. But, you have to ask the question, if they can't maintain a grid with conventional energy sources, how good are they going to be running literally the most complex machines ever produced, which are nuclear power plants? Are they going to be able to keep those up and running and safe? Whereas solar plants are extremely simple. I mean, literally, it's pretty much just a wires going from your panels into the grid, and you have the inverter that does all the work of matching the frequencies and putting the power on when there's too much, and letting it come off when there's too little. There's no moving parts, there's no pumps to fail, there's no turbines to trip, and so it's well within any country's technical abilities to run solar plants. So a nice development down there in South Africa. Okay, now getting off the energy topic, just a straight environmental story. The oldest tree in the world is been recently discovered, allegedly discovered. It's a Patagonian cypress, and those are related to redwoods. And it was discovered in Chile's Alerce Costero National Park. That's a big, stately tree. It's 92 feet tall, 14 feet in diameter, and it's alleged to be about roughly 5,500 years old, which is definitely what you'd call a ripe old age. And there's pictures of it. It looks pretty healthy. Looks like it's got at least another 1,000 years or so in it. And it's just a reminder that when we don't wipe these things out, nature does really incredible stuff. I mean, the idea of a 5,500-year-old tree, I mean, it's older than some of the pyramids.
Wow.
Wow. And it's been hanging out there. Now, it does face threats. Part of the threat is that people are actually going to see it, and that's kind of causing problems for the root system. And they actually built a viewing platform, but unfortunately they figured out that the viewing platform is preventing rainwater from getting to the roots.
No.
So, they're going to have to make some changes down there, but hopefully this is a tree that will continue to grow for another couple thousand years. Okay, so now some bad news. The Vogtle 4 nuclear plant has achieved criticality, and that means that it has started producing nuclear wastes. It's not yet hooked to the grid. That's thought, they're projecting that might happen next quarter sometime, but it's the second new nuclear plant to achieve criticality in the U.S. in over 30 years. It's 15 years, took them 15 years to build it this so far. It's 8 years behind schedule and $20 billion over budget. And it's just a reminder that these nuclear plants,
It is producing waste. So
exactly.
It's interesting that they're measuring that as a success.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
yay, it's producing waste.
Yep.
No energy yet.
Exactly. Even though it hasn't put a single kilowatt onto the grid yet.
Right.
It's busy producing waste. And given that the wastes last 200,000 plus years as being deadly radioactive, and the electricity that it generates lasts like 1 second, they're more accurately referred to as nuclear waste factories,
Basically.
as opposed to nuclear power plants. And so, but that hasn't stopped a lot of the, like the U.S. government's Office of Nuclear Energy from crowing about what a great success this 8-year behind schedule, $20 billion over budget plant is. So, but interestingly, a lot of people aren't buying it, especially down there in Georgia, where people's electricity bills are going to skyrocket for the next 60 years to pay for this plant, because that's what the Georgia Public Service Commission let Southern Energy do, just stick the ratepayers with the bill for these terrible white elephants. All right, so that was kind of depressing, but there's been some good news, or some good projections for 2024, some optimistic stuff. Turns out, according to the Energy Information Agency, on a report they released on February 15th, projected for 2024, 94% of the new electric capacity that's going to be installed in the United States are going to be solar, battery storage, and wind.
Okay.
So specifically, solar's the big one with 58% at 36.4 gigawatts. Battery is next with 23% or 14.3 gigawatts. And then comes wind with 8.2 gigawatts, which is about 13%. And nuclear, even with the Vogtle 4 plant, is only 2%, so 1.1 gigawatts. And that basically shows just how unnecessary nuclear is. It really is just sort of a footnote and an afterthought. Unfortunately, there's still some natural gas coming online, 4% of the total, 2.5 gigawatts. But interestingly, this report from the Energy Information Agency does not include rooftop solar, which if you toss that in, that roughly doubles the amount of solar. So 36.4 gigawatts is utility solar, and the estimates I'm seeing is somewhere around 30 gigawatts approximately of rooftop solar is expected to be installed too. So the pace at which we are decarbonizing with wind, solar, and storage is just ramping up like crazy. I mean, we are putting up a whole bunch more than we did. In fact, this year's projections doubles last year's new installations. So we're increasing our production of clean energy exponentially. And the question, of course, is, are we going to make it? We are accelerating clean energy, which is great, but the question is, are we going to make it in time? The answer right now is no, not yet. I mean, we are on a path to making it, but unfortunately, we are again seeing right now we are at record heat in terms of ocean, seawater, sea surface temperatures. That they are just continuing to just leap off the charts. So no, we're not making it yet, but we are at least in the race finally. Those of us who've been fighting nuclear power, those of us who've been advocating clean, renewable energy, wind and solar, we've been saying for decades and decades that there's the potential's there's more than enough energy to meet all our needs. And finally, the market has caught up with us. And the market has spoken, and the market says no nukes. Because literally no one is investing in nuclear power. The only reason nuclear is continuing is because governments are dumping tax dollars into it at an incredible rate. And as I've said before, this is kind of why I'm not a socialist, because sometimes the market gets it right. Sometimes the market makes the right decision, and the governments are the ones that screw it up. So that's where we're at right now, unfortunately. So that's pretty much our show for this week. Just a reminder, keep getting ready. March 11th will be Unplugged Nuclear Power, where we ask people to boycott grid electricity for 24 hours as a protest against nukes. as always, you are more than welcome. In fact, we urge you to comment on what you've heard today or any other environmental issue. You could send an email to Joe at DeMare, that's DEMARE, FOR, greenfuture.org, or you can send a text or leave a voice message anytime at 419-973-5841. So that's pretty much our show. Thank you so much for listening. Rebecca, do you have anything to add before we go off the air? We got about half a minute here where we can say a little something.
Gosh, I don't know. Stay warm, babies.
Yeah, stay warm. The heat wave is coming. Next Tuesday, my phone is saying it's going to be 66 degrees around here. So, and there's 0 ice on the Great Lakes still. So, even though we have our little cold snap, global warming is still rushing right along at a breakneck pace. All right, so that should take us to the end of our show. Are we ready with our theme song? Or are we pushing things? Or we still got a minute here?
We got a little bit. We can go.
I just want to say thank you so much for listening, and we're gonna be trying to increase our listenership by providing all these wonderful interviews we've done over the years to our local environmental science departments, because I think 5 years of interviews with people on the front lines of all these environmental issues, I think it's valuable information for anybody to have, especially students who are studying environmental science, the people who are going to save the future for us. So that's it for our show. Thank you so much for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off. Kind of ran out of steam there. You got some lint, I guess that is, right? Oh no, it's this.
Oh,
It's
okay.
one of these.
Get that on my hair.
Yeah. Okay, you got it.
Okay. Can we stop at the grocery on the way home?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We need mayo, a jar of minced garlic, creamer bagels, avocado, and mushrooms.
All right. Wow, sounds interesting.
Well, I'm just trying to do more avocado and mushrooms because the nutritionist said to do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. There it gets so full.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't